The House will come to order. Prayer by the chaplain.
Loving Creator, we have gathered today, which is the fifth day of the first session of our state legislative leaders. With an attitude of gratitude, we ask that your love, mercy, and grace abide with us as we continue to face the challenges to go boldly to do and say what is necessary that will transform hope into achievement and will challenge them to move beyond perfunctory acts of lawmaking to serious legislation that will influence positive change and allow justice to roll down like mighty streams. May we find within ourselves a devotion to remain committed to the health, safety, development, and economic growth of the state of Minnesota, not just for a privileged few, but we remain determined to be our keepers for all of our brothers and sisters. May we pledge to feed the hungry, give drink to the thirsty, clothe the naked, and shelter the homeless. May your model of hospitality become our communal responsibility. So, God, we know that all things are possible in the tenacity of faith. Though we cannot hear your voice or see your face, enable us to live out our dreams and envision the future as we continue to press forward in you, ourselves, and each other. No matter the obstacles or discouragement, no matter the mountains of difficulties, no matter the deep valleys of various philosophical opinions, may we always have the faith to ultimately believe in the beloved community compassionately expressed by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, whose 92nd birthday we jointly celebrated yesterday. Loving God, we know that words and prayers still matter when they are linked to action grounded in our state's vision that all are created equal with rights to liberty and life and rights and dreams we must forever honor, cherish, and protect. Rights that break the spell of injustices so that hatred may be turned to love, dislikes to likes, disgust to acceptance, and our nation's insurrection into a collective form of peaceful protest for the good of all humankind. And for this, we are most grateful. Amen.
The chaplain for today is Reverend Oliver White from Clark Grace United Church of Christ, South St. Paul, Minnesota. Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing and recite the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Members, when the chief clerk calls the roll today to establish a quorum, please state your name, your location, and that you are present. Members using the remote voting application should also press the green yes button when your name is called. The clerk will take the roll.
Acom. Acom.
Acom, Minnetonka, present.
Acom, Minnetonka, present. Egbadje.
Egbadje, Minneapolis, present.
Egbadje, Minneapolis, present. Ackland.
Ackland, St. Peter, present.
Ackland, St. Peter, present. Albright.
Albright, Prior Lake, present.
Albright, Prior Lake, present. Anderson.
Anderson, St. Paul, present.
Anderson, St. Paul, present. Backer.
Backer, St. Paul, present.
Backer, St. Paul, present. Bonner.
Bonner, Maple Grove, present.
Bonner, Maple Grove, present. Barr.
Barr, East Bethel, present.
Barr, East Bethel, present. Baker. Baker.
Baker, Delano, present.
Baker, Delano, present. Becker, Finn.
Becker Finn, Roseville, present.
Becker, Finn, Roseville, present. Bennett.
Bennett, St. Paul, present.
Bennett, St. Paul, present. Berg.
Berg, Burnsville, present.
Berg, Burnsville, present. Bernardi.
Bernardi, New Brighton, present.
Bernardi, New Brighton, present. Bierman.
Bierman, Apple Valley, present.
Bierman, Apple Valley, present. Bliss.
Bliss, St. Paul, present.
Bliss, St. Paul, present. Bow.
Bo, Chanhassen, present.
Bow, Chanhassen, present. Bolden.
Bolden, Rochester, present.
Bolden, Rochester, present. Burkle.
Burkle, Skagen Township, present.
Burkle, Skagen Township, present. Carlson.
Carlson, Bloomington, present.
Carlson, Bloomington, present. Christensen.
Christensen, Stillwater, present.
Christensen, Stillwater, present. Daniels.
Daniels, St. Paul, present.
Daniels, St. Paul, present. Doubt.
Doubt, Crown, present.
Doubt, Crown, present. Davids. Davids, St. Paul, present. Davney.
Dabney, Minneapolis, present.
Davney, Minneapolis, present. Damuth.
Damath, Cold Spring, present.
Damuth, Cold Spring, present. Detmer.
Detmer, Forest Lake, present.
Detmer, Forest Lake, present. Drzkowski.
Druskowski, St. Paul, present.
Drzkowski, St. Paul, present. Eklund.
Eklund, International Falls, present.
Eklund, International Falls, present. Edelson.
Edelson, Edina, present.
Edelson, Edina, present. Elkins.
Elkins, Bloomington, present.
Elkins, Bloomington, present. Erickson.
Erickson, St. Paul, present.
Erickson, St. Paul, present. Feist.
Feist, New, present.
Feist. What was that? Feist. Fisher.
Fisher, St. Paul, present.
Fisher, St. Paul, present. Frankie.
Frankie, St. Paul, present.
Frankie, St. Paul, present. Franson.
Franson, St. Paul, present.
Franson, St. Paul, present. Frazier.
Fraser, New Hope, present.
Frazier, New Hope, present. Frederick.
Frederick Mankato, present.
Frederick Mankato, present. Freiberg.
Freiberg, Golden Valley, present.
Freiberg, Golden Valley, present. Garofalo.
Garofalo, Farmington, present.
Garofalo, Farmington, present. Gomez.
Gomez, Minneapolis, present.
Gomez, Minneapolis, present. Green.
Green, Boston, present.
Green, Foston, present. Greenman.
Greenman, Minneapolis, present.
Greenman, Minneapolis, present. Grossel.
Grossel, Clearbrook, present.
Grossel, Clearbrook, present. Gruenhagen.
Gruenhagen, Glencoe, present.
Gruenhagen, Glencoe, present. Haley.
Haley, Red Wing, present.
Haley, Red Wing, present. Hamilton.
Hamilton, St. Paul, present.
Hamilton, St. Paul, present. Hanson R.
Hanson R. Harmony, present.
Hanson R. Harmony, present. Hanson J.
Hampton J, Burnsville, present.
Hanson J. Burnsville, present. Hassan.
Hassan, Minneapolis, present.
Hassan, Minneapolis, present. Hausman.
Hausman, St. Paul, present.
Hausman, St. Paul, present. Heinrich.
Heinrich, St. Paul, present.
Heinrich, St. Paul, present. Heinzman.
Heinzman, St. Paul, present.
Heinzman, St. Paul, present. Her, St. Paul, present. Hertas.
Hertas, Greenfield, present.
Hertas, Greenfield, present. Hollins. Hollins.
Holland, St. Paul, present.
Hollins, St. Paul, present. Hornstein.
Hornstein, Minneapolis, present.
Hornstein, Minneapolis, present. Howard.
Howard, Richfield, present.
Howard, Richfield, present. Hewitt.
Hewitt, Rosemount, present.
Hewitt, Rosemount, present. Igo.
Igo, St. Paul, present.
Igo, St. Paul, present. Johnson. Johnson, St. Paul, present. Jordan.
Jordan St. Paul, present.
Jordan St. Paul, present. Jurgens.
Jurgens Cottage Grove, present.
Jurgens, Cottage Grove, present. Keeler.
Keeler Moorhead, present.
Keeler, Moorhead, present. Keel. Keel.
Keel, Hammond Township, present.
Keel, Hammond Township, present. Cleavorn.
Cleveland Plymouth, present.
Cleavorn, Plymouth, present. Cagle.
Kegel, Spring Lake Park, present.
Cagle, Spring Lake Park, present. Katiza Watun.
Katiza Watun, Eden Prairie, present.
Katiza Watun, Eden Prairie, present. Kosnick.
Cosmic St. Paul, present.
Kosnick, St. Paul, present. Creshaw.
Creshaw, Little Falls, present.
Creshaw, Little Falls, present. Lee.
Lee, Minneapolis, present.
Lee, Minneapolis, present. Liebling.
Liebling, Rochester, present.
Liebling, Rochester, present. Lilly.
Lily, North St. Paul, present.
Lilly, North St. Paul, present. Lippert.
Lippert, St. Paul, present.
Lippert, St. Paul, present. Listlegard.
Listlegard, St. Paul, present.
Listlegard, St. Paul, present. Long.
Long, Minneapolis, present.
Long, Minneapolis, present. Lucero.
Lucero, Wright County, present.
Lucero, Wright County, present. Lewick.
Lewick, St. Paul, present.
Lewick, St. Paul, present. Mariani. Mariani. Markwart.
Markwart, Dilworth, present.
Markwart, Dilworth, present. Mason.
Mason, Egan, present.
Mason, Egan, present. McDonald.
McDonald, Delano, present.
McDonald, Delano, present. Mecklin.
Meckland, Becker Township, present.
Mecklin, Becker Township, present. Miller. Miller, St. Paul, present. Moeller.
Moeller, Shoreview, present.
Moeller, Shoreview, present. Moran.
Moran, St. Paul, present.
Moran, St. Paul, present. Morrison.
Morrison, Deep Haven, present.
Morrison, Deep Haven, present. Mortensen.
Mortensen, St. Paul, present.
Mortensen, St. Paul, present. Mueller.
Mueller, St. Paul, present.
Mueller, St. Paul, present. Munson.
Munson, St. Paul, present.
Munson, St. Paul, present. Murphy. Murphy. Nash.
Hermantown, present.
Murphy, Hermantown, present. Nash.
Nash, Waconia, present.
Nash, Waconia, present. Nelson M.
Nelson M., Brooklyn Park, present.
Nelson M. Brooklyn Park, present. Nelson N.
Nelson N., Clover Township, present.
Nelson N. Clover Township, present. New Brindley. New Brindley, St. Paul, present. Newer.
No, Minneapolis, present.
Newer, Minneapolis, present. Novotny.
Novotny, Elk River, present.
Novotny, Elk River, present. O'Driscoll. O'Driscoll, St. Paul, present. Olson B.
Olson B., Elmore, present.
Olson B. Elmore, present. Olson L.
Olson L. Duluth, present.
Olson L. Duluth, present. O'Neill.
O'Neill, Maple Lake, present.
O'Neill, Maple Lake, present. Pulowski.
Pulowski, Winona, present.
Pulowski, Winona, present. Petersburg.
Petersburg, St. Paul, present.
Petersburg, St. Paul, present. Farr.
Farr, LeSueur, present.
Farr, LeSueur, present. Pearson.
Pearson, Rochester Township, present.
Pearson, Rochester Township, present. Pinto.
Pinto, St. Paul, present.
Pinto, St. Paul, present. Poston.
Poston, Lakeshore, present.
Poston, Lakeshore, present. Pryor.
Pryor, Minnetonka, present.
Pryor, Minnetonka, present. Quam.
Quam, Byron, present.
Quam, Byron, present. Raleigh.
Raleigh, St. Paul, present.
Raleigh, St. Paul, present. Rasmussen. Rasmussen, St. Paul, present. Ryer.
Ryer, Egan, present.
Ryer, Egan, present. Richardson.
Richardson, Mendota Heights, present.
Richardson, Mendota Heights, present. Robbins. Robbins, St. Paul, present. Sandell.
Sandell, Woodbury, present.
Sandell, Woodbury, present. Sandsted.
Sandsted, Hibbing, present.
Sandsted, Hibbing, present. Schumacher.
Schumacher, Laverne, present.
Schumacher, Laverne, present. Schultz.
Schultz, Duluth, present.
Schultz, Duluth, present. Scott, excused. Stevenson.
Stevenson, Coon Rapids, present.
Stevenson, Coon Rapids, present. Sundin.
Sundin, Thompson Township, present.
Sundin, Thompson Township, present. Swazinski.
Wazinski, Northern Township, present.
Swazinski, Northern Township, present. Tice.
Tice, St. Cloud, present.
Tice, St. Cloud, present. Thompson.
Thompson, St. Paul, present.
Thompson, St. Paul, present. Torkelson.
Torkelson, St. Paul, present.
Torkelson, St. Paul, present. Erdahl.
Erdahl, Acton Township, present.
Erdahl, Acton Township, present. Vang.
Vang, Brooklyn Center, present.
Vang, Brooklyn Center, present. Waslowick.
Waslowick, White Bear Township, present.
Waslowick, White Bear Township, present. West.
West Blaine, present.
West, Blaine, present. Winkler. Winkler, St. Paul, present. Walgamot. Walgamot, St. Paul, present. Zhangjiai.
Zhangjiai, St. Paul, present.
Zhangjiai, St. Paul, present. Zhangti.
Zhang T, St. Paul, present.
Zhangti, St. Paul, present. Joachim.
Joachim Hopkins, present.
Joachim Hopkins, present. Speaker Hartman. Speaker Hartman, St. Paul, present. Feist.
Feist, New Brighton, present.
Feist, New Brighton, present. Mariani.
Mariani, St. Paul, present.
Mariani, St. Paul, present.
Members using the remote voting application should make sure to press the green yes button so that we can properly adjust the system. So if you did not do that when your name was called, but you are voting with the remote voting application, please press your green button now.
I think so.
The clerk will close the roll. A quorum is present. The clerk will read the journal of the preceding day.
Journal of the House, 92nd Session, 2021, 4th day, St. Paul, Minnesota, Thursday, January 14th, 2021.
If there is no objection, further reading of the journal will be dispensed with, and the journal will be approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Hearing no objection, the journal is approved as corrected by the chief clerk.
Madam Speaker,
State your name.
Representative Eric Mortensen.
Representative Mortensen, for what purpose do you rise?
I rise to a point of order. I suggest the absence of a quorum. Only 44 people are in St. Paul right now at the seat of government. Therefore, no business should be conducted until we have a quorum.
Representative Mortensen, I find your point of order not well taken. Introduction of bills. The following House files have been offered for introduction today. The chief clerk will report the House files and give them their first reading.
Introduction of first reading of House Files 134 through 203.
First reading, House Files 134 through 203. Messages from the Senate.
Message from the Senate. Madam Speaker, I hereby announce the passage by the Senate of the following Senate file herewith transmitted. Senate file number 26. The message is signed Cal R. Ludeman, Secretary of the Senate.
First reading of Senate files.
First reading, Senate File number 26, an act relating to family law. Becker Finn moved that Senate File number 26 and House File number 17, now on the general register, be referred to the Chief Clerk for comparison.
Without objection, so ordered. Motions and resolutions. There are copies of the non-controversial motions at the House desk and online. If there is no objection, we'll take action on these motions first. Hearing no objection, the motions prevail.
Long and others are introducing House Resolution number 1, a House resolution condemning violence and violent rhetoric directed at our United States Capitol and state capitals. The resolution is being referred to the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration.
Announcements. Representative Winkler.
Madam Speaker, I move that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 3:30 p.m. Thursday, January 21st, 2021.
Representative Winkler moves that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 3:30 p.m. Thursday, January 21st, 2021. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Representative Winkler.
Madam Speaker, I move that the House do now adjourn.
Representative Winkler moves that the House do now adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails. The House stand adjourned until 3:30 Thursday, January 21st, 2021.